Yo, what's up everybody? This is Junior Chicken. April is a very important month. Not because it's my birth month, but it's also Autism Awareness Month. Autism is a really mysterious disorder that affects many people. It has its downsides, but also has its benefits. You may have seen depictions of autism through movies such as Brain Dead. But autism is much more deep and complex than you would think. First, 1 in 88 children are diagnosed with autism. More children are diagnosed with autism than with juvenile diabetes, AIDS, and cancer combined. Plus, autism is 4 to 5 times more likely in boys than girls. 1 in 54 boys are diagnosed as opposed to 1 in 252 girls. The main symptom with autism is having difficulties with social interaction and communication. Social skills are something that regular people have second nature. They naturally pick up on things such as table manners, talking on the phone, having conversations, and so on. But autistic people aren't that good at it because the part of their brains for that are not quite as developed. And therefore they have trouble with these normal social skills that other people wouldn't have. Some children with autism might have higher or lowered senses, which means they could dread the sound of a fire drill because it's too loud for them, or they could be really picky eaters. Other symptoms with autism include a lack of empathy, having limited interests, having to throw tantrums when they feel things aren't going their way, and having a short attention span. The word autism actually comes from the Greek word autos, meaning self. It was first found in 1911, where it was tied with schizophrenia. But in the 1940s, autism was used to describe children who went through social and emotional problems. There was also a similar condition found in the 1940s, Aspergers. I know that's not the actual pronunciation of it, but I find the regular pronunciation of it is kind of childish. It was actually found by Dr. Hans Aspergers. Thus, we get the name. It was until the 1960s that autism became its own thing and separate from schizophrenia. In the 1960s and 1970s, LSD and electric shock were used to try to treat autism, but they weren't very effective. It was from the 1970s to the 1980s that they found that behavioral therapy was much more effective in treating autism. It was in the 1990s that they found that autism and Asperger's and other social disorders were very alike, and thus they developed ASD, Autism Spectrum Disorder. This allowed autism to be much more diverse, with very severe cases where children would have very little to no social interaction, to mild, where they had some interaction. Even more recently, in December of 2012, the diagnosis for Asperger's has been thrown out the window. Many people diagnosed with Asperger's are a bit concerned because they're afraid they're going to not be eligible for special services. But that's not likely going to happen, since they're just going to move to the mild part of the autistic spectrum. Even though autistic people can be socially awkward, they can excel in visual skills, art, math, and music, and think in totally different ways than from other people. In fact, some people with autism score higher than normal on IQ tests. Probably the most famous person with autism is Grandin. Grandin got bullied a lot when she was younger, but thankfully she was able to use her thinking in pictures to excel in science and make her way into the cattle industry for slaughtering cattle, and eventually became an advocate for parents and children with autism. There's even a whole movie about her story. She also has a TED Talk, which I've linked in the description, along with a movie review of the movie Grandin. Grandin found that compression was a good way to calm people with autism down. But since she wasn't so fond of hugs, she made her own version of a squeeze chute. A squeeze chute is often used to calm down cattle. There's also Jerry Newport. He's the guy behind the book, Your Life is Not a Label, which means you can't let autism define your life. He spends most of his time as a cab driver, but he also acts as a lecturer for autistic people. He's also inspired Ron Bass in making the movie Mozart and the Whale, which is based on Jerry Newport's relationship with his wife, who's also autistic. He also is a big animal person. If you've seen from the picture, he's with a dolphin here. He has about 16 pets. My favorite person with autism is Daniel Tammet. He has a bit of a resemblance to my friend Matt.
Wait, which part of the nugget is the chicken nugget?
This guy is able to picture numbers and words as colorful shapes in his mind, allowing him to learn math and language in such amazing ways. It's so amazing, he's been able to memorize the digits of pi up to the 22,514th digit. And he's also able to learn Icelandic, one of the hardest languages out there, in only 2 weeks. He also has a TED Talk, which I've linked in the description. And don't forget Stephen Wiltshire. This guy took a helicopter ride for 20 minutes over the city of New York and was able to make a detailed 18-foot sketch of the whole thing. He was able to memorize a full overhead view of New York and sketch the whole thing down to detail. Here's one more name for you. Adam Young. This guy is an electric and pop music producer behind a pretty popular song from last year featuring Carly Rae Jepsen. In fact, you might know him better for his stage name, Owl City. Autism is still very mysterious. In fact, what causes autism is still a mystery, although it's most likely genetic and environmental factors. There has been some speculation that mercury poisoning may lead to autism. It's also been rumored that vaccinations can lead to autism, although further research shows that it's most likely false. When it comes to treating autism, some studies have shown that gluten-free diets and casein-free diets can be effective when treating autism. Gluten being wheat products like bread, whereas casein being dairy products such as milk and cheese. But in my opinion, the best way to treat autism is through education. Teaching autistic kids social skills and why they are so important through behavioral therapy, language therapy, speech therapy, etc. will ultimately help autistic children succeed in the real world. And thankfully, there are programs out there helping kids with autism learn social skills, as well as meet other autistic kids to form friendships. There are a ton of programs out there that help kids and adults with autism and bring awareness to this mysterious yet amazing disorder. A bunch of these organizations you can find in the description. There's tons of other links you can find down there too. You can see the 2 TED Talks that I mentioned earlier. You can see some articles I found which helped me make this video. There's also a review of Temple Grandin's movie, a book review of Your Life is Not a Label. There's an autism success story, a video featuring Destin from Smarter Every Day, but it's not on his channel, and Overly Attached Girlfriend even has a Dare to Share video where she goes to a program called Surf Camp, which helps out kids with autism. Next week, I'll be back in my regular business making computer science videos, so stay tuned and I'll see you later.